Hi, I'm Simon Kidd, and today we've come mayfly fishing in the east of Devon on the beautiful River Otter. The weather's good, it's nice and sunny. We have got a bit of breeze, and the breeze is going to pick up more this afternoon, we know that, so it's going to make it more tricky. And also at the moment it's blowing from the east, which is down, well, northeast, it's downstream here, which fishing a big fly on light tackle is it's going to be a bit of a challenge, but there you go. We like a challenge, so that's fine. The river itself is famous for its trout fishing. There are a few sea trout as well, so some of the trout in here, when they mature, we'll go to sea, a few of them, but many of the trout, they're not huge. There's fish in here probably 2-3 pounds maybe, but the average fish is probably 6 to 8 inches, and there are some decent ones in here too, and hopefully we'll get a few of those today. The River Otter is well known for its trout fishing, obviously, and the mayfly in particular at this time of year it can be sensational. There's been several years now of really good mayfly hatches. So when the females lay their eggs, that's the start of the life cycle, and they'll spend literally 1 or 2 years under the water here, normally about 2 years on the bottom of the river in the sort of sediment and that sort of thing, and then they'll come to the surface, they'll eclode, especially on a nice day like today, and then they'll go to the bank and everything, and they will hang underneath nettles, they'll hang under the reeds, they'll hang under the branches of the trees and everything, and then they'll go through this amazing metamorphosis to the finished imago, which is the mature mayfly. The males will then start to cloud in an afternoon. The females will then fly through the cloud. The males have got quite long legs on the front actually, and they'll grab one of the females as they fly through the cloud, mate with her, and then she'll go and lay the eggs in the river, and that repeats the cycle. But they'll live 2 years in the river, they'll hatch off, they'll wait for a day like today, they'll hatch off, and probably by the end of the day is the end of their life. There's some spinners that'll come down through the river in the evening, which gets really difficult actually, because the flies themselves don't move on the water, and it's really difficult on a water like this to avoid drag. And that makes the fishing quite tricky at the same time. The river here is full of fly life. It's wonderful, and I've mentioned about the 2 year life cycle of the mayfly and everything. You've got to come here prepared for whatever might be available. But yes, I know we've come here for the mayfly today, and I've got a box of flies here in particular, which will hopefully meet all our needs for today. This is the box I've come prepared with today. Through the life cycle of the mayfly, we're talking first of all at the larva. The eggs have been laid, the larvae are on the bottom, and they're feeding. They're here for 2 years, so these are typical mayfly nymphs that we can fish on the bottom of the river, and we could even fish them under dry, that sort of thing, if we want to, in the deeper pools and so on, and the faster riffles. Then as the mayfly becomes to hatch on a day like today, you've got them in various different stages here as they start to come to the surface and eclode. They start off quite yellow, referred to as green drakes on occasion. And then this particular pattern here, this is an emerging pattern, so you can imagine that sat on the surface. It's got a bit of polyfoam on the top here, and as the mayflies create a bit of disturbance on the top, sometimes it helps just to wiggle the rod and just to give those a bit of movement on the top. It's about the only time you can fish a mayfly with drag and still catch fish. Then of course we come to the adults, and before we get to there, there's various different types of patterns for wet mayfly as they're hatching off and that sort of thing, and this is another type of example. Okay, that's a clean camera obviously. Then we come to the fly that's ecloded on the top, so it's hatched off and it goes as a dun. Okay, so this is a dun, or rather this another version here, this is a fly line dun, or that's not in particular, but there are different dun patterns, many different dun patterns. Okay, my favourite pattern is this one here, which is for the adult pattern when it returns in the afternoon. You can probably, that looks familiar there, it's tied with CDC. And we'll go through the tying of this one. The tails are dark. This is the perfect imago as they return to the water to lay their eggs and everything. And then finally, once they've laid their eggs, of course, the mayfly dies. And when they die, they collapse on the water. These are a couple of spinner patterns here, for example. They sit on the water, and if you move these, they really don't work very well at all. By the time the spinners are on the water at the end of the day, many trout have gorged themselves, and these need to have no drag whatsoever. And fishing on late in the day for mayfly season can get really quite tricky, and they get very fussy as well. What I've also brought with me are a few other options. There's things like caterpillars, that sort of thing, for the morning before anything starts to wake up and start moving. And early spring, if there's no mayfly on the water or whatever, there's various other patterns. I've got some beetle patterns here. Another pattern here is the St Mark's fly, or the hawthorn fly. That's another one. There's been quite a few around this year, but they're basically over now. And the first big frost really knocks, well, the first big frost, a good frost will often knock them on the head, but they've been good this year, and we've had a great spring. And then if it gets really tricky, not everything is on mayfly. Sometimes they get a bit choosy, and I've got various different things here. Some CDC patterns, some small olives and that sort of thing. The river's full of a range of insect life here, and you've got to come well prepared, because if you come and have a day here, you're going to enjoy yourself, that's for sure. But it's not just the insect life either. The fishing's fantastic. The river's in really good condition at the moment as well. The bankside vegetation is very lush and supports it teems with wildlife of all different things. We've got roe deer locally here and everything. The bird life is fantastic, and the mayflies themselves actually don't just feed the fish either, they feed everything else that's on the riverbanks too. And yeah, it should be a really fantastic day. Just seen a couple of fish rising up here. They're quite small fish, but we're going to have a go for them anyway. I'm going to put the dry on. And what I've got here is Diver's Demister material. It's very clear, and you can have mud. I don't have any with me, but I'm making do with this today. It's very clear. I'm just rubbing this on here onto the leader, like that. Basically, this material is hydrophilic, which means it absorbs water, so it's not hydrophobic like the nylon, for example. So when it sits on the water, it just sits down nice and gently in the water rather than sitting proud on the water on the meniscus. So it helps take the leader off the top for me. And before I start, I'm just going to put a little bit of CDC oil on the plumes of the CDC here, just to help it float a little bit better. It keeps it nice and high on the water, which is what we want to see. And I've just put a little bit on the tail as well. Not touching the hook with any of that material at all, so I really don't want the hook to stand out on the water at all. I want that to sit nicely in the water like that. When I lift this off now, I'm actually going to snake roll it off. If I were to pluck it off, like you can do it, it would bespook all the fish in the pool in this really clear, low water conditions. So if I snake roll it off, something that Hal Morgan showed me, there's no drag as I lift it off, and it doesn't spook the fish underneath. I'll be surprised if he comes one more time. We'll try, but he's literally just in front of that obstacle, and that's a bit too wide. We've got a little bit of a breeze here today. That's where I want the fly. Dragging at the same speed as the bubbles, absolutely perfectly, look. Absolutely perfect, but now it's just picking up a little bit of drag coming from the current here. One more cast. Right, what I've just done is change the fly there. The fish came up and took the fly just now, but it had a dark wing and it didn't take it properly. So I changed it to something with a lighter wing. The flies coming off at the moment are still emerging mayfly, so they're the dun still coming off at the moment with much lighter wings. The one I had on first of all was more of a spinner pattern with a darker wing on it, so I've changed it, put this on, and the fish took it straight away. We've got a couple of fish rising under here now, and the fishing's definitely picked up this afternoon. We've got spinners laying on the water. There's one here now, just coming down. I don't know if you can see that. She's dropped in a second, there she goes, and she just laid. And the fish have obviously come up with that as well. There's a couple of fish rising in here. We're going to sneak up this bank. The wind's still not in our favour, it's blowing downstream. It's not strong, but it's not in our favour with a decent sized fly on, unlike tackle. They're not huge fish, but they are really good fun. Well, there you go, that's a proper wild brownie from the River Otter. Beautiful fish. And he's actually swallowed the fly. It's on the mayfly. I'm going to have to take that out. It's barbless, but that's it. Well, that's it for another day. We've had an absolutely delightful day's fishing here. It's a beautiful place. East Devon, the River Otter's fantastic for fishing. The wildlife here has been amazing too, and the highlight for the day had to be when that kingfisher popped along and showed us how it should be done properly. It's been wonderful. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on another episode.